Hi, so my name is Roy, if you don't know me. It's going to be very sad soon. I don't know why you're happy. By the way, Eric, where can the camera not see me anymore?
You're good.
I'm good, because I'm going to walk a lot.
Yep.
Hi. So, most of my friends here do not know my crazy life story. And I told you I'm an entrepreneur. I have a startup company called Valero Clinical. We try to improve certain things in healthcare that I will talk about a bit. But my story begins like more than 10 years ago. I was accepted into medical school in the lovely city of Bologna, in Italy. And this was my dream. I was one of those annoying kids who always wanted to be a doctor, watch all these doctor shows. I volunteered in the Red Cross. I did everything needed to get to medical school. It was my entire dream in life. I was so sad that I missed 1 year because we have to go to the army. So I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be a doctor at the age of 27 and not 26, and it's too late, and all these stupid things that you think when you're so young, and you don't appreciate the time that you have, because I had plans and then life happened. It's usually what happens when you try to make plans. I've decided I'm going to Italy, and I was a volunteer in the Israeli Red Cross. It's like those guys here you have in Austria, all these organizations that you can volunteer in an ambulance also. So I was a medic on an ambulance unit, and I was an instructor, and I was very good at what I'm doing, and I really liked it. And it was almost 2 weeks before medical school. My friends threw a huge party at the station, the paramedic station, and yeah, we just celebrated. Everything was great. And it was my last shift as a paramedic and the start of my new journey. And this shift didn't end up really well because we got a call and the ambulance is parking really close to where we're partying, because it's an ambulance station built in such a way that no matter where you come from, the bay of the ambulance is super close. So I had like 20 steps to go to the door of the ambulance. And I had the call and I started to walk, and you don't run to the ambulance. There are reasons for this, because like you don't want to fall, and it's too much adrenaline when you drive is not good. So you walk really fast, but you don't run. But I started to walk, and while I'm walking, things got fuzzy. Like my legs started to feel funny, my head started to feel funny. Everything was a bit funny, fizzy, I would say, around me. And I did a few steps, and the ambulance door was getting really close, and I come to open the ambulance door, and my legs are like not existent anymore. I don't feel my legs, and I open the ambulance door, and my entire world becomes dark. And then I open my eyes, and I see lights above me, and I hear a siren, which is a good thing when you have to go with an ambulance somewhere. But when I gave it a second thought, I realized I'm not in the front seat of the ambulance, I'm in the back bed of the ambulance, and I'm being rushed to hospital myself. I didn't understand what's going on, and it was a very, very strange ordeal, because there was a siren, my friends were really, really stressed, and they're paramedics, they're not supposed to be stressed, and I'm feeling really bad. I have chest pain, I can't breathe, really, I can't breathe. And I'm fainting every few seconds, and for some strange reason, the radio is super loud, and there is a Bon Jovi song, super loud playing, and it's a Bed of Roses. It's kind of 90s old song, which is a very strange analogy of what's going to happen, because the next few years are going to be anything but Bed of Roses. Okay, it's going to be maybe Bed of Thorns or whatever they say in this romantic song, but it's not Bed of Roses. And I'm arriving into hospital, which is a not very nice thing when you're a paramedic. Everybody knows you. Everybody's being very stressed. What happened to you? I'm like 21 years old, right? I'm very young. Arriving to the ER bed, they start to do all these checkups. The doctor who's treating me, the day before we had a shift together in the ambulance, because he's doing both. And there was something strange about him, because he was very tired. And then I realized that as residents, young doctors do, he didn't sleep for like 30 hours. He's in the same shift. And he has to make very, very, very important decision regarding my life at the moment. And they take some blood pressure and bloods and ECG, and then I heard one of the nurses that I know for years saying, "Oh no," which is not a bad thing to hear in ER when you come there. And then I realized things are not going well for me that day. The hospital staff decided in that moment that I, at 21 years old, healthy, young, beautiful man, that I'm having a heart attack at the age of 21. They were very wrong, but apparently medical errors happen. And when you have a heart attack, you have a certain protocol of medications that you have to give to the person. And as a paramedic, I know it by heart. And I know what's coming next every stage. But when they reach a point that they need to give me a drug to lower the stress of my heart, because the heart is working very hard in a heart attack, so you want to take the stress of the heart, so you lower the blood pressure in the body. But I'm looking at the monitor and I see that my blood pressure is so low that I'm fainting every few seconds, and then I'm doing like 1 + 1. I wouldn't give another patient this drug. And I'm asking the doctor what's going on, but he's so tired, his hands are shaking. So he's preparing the medication, he's doing like this, it's coming to my vein, and then I realize, if this drug coming into my system, I'm dead. So for the first time in my life, I had this little crack in my amazing dream of what it's like to be a doctor and my trust in doctors. I thought of them as angels in white coats and superhumans. And then I realized that this doctor that I know is being very tired and is making a mistake that could kill me. So I'm grabbing his hands with my less strength that I have in my hands. And I shouted at him to not give me the medication. He apologized. They give me something to relax. They call another doctor, and eventually they put me in an internal medicine ward. It's like where the old people are with all the fevers and pneumonias, and like I'm the youngest one in the ward, and they don't have a bed for me, so I'm in the hallway, which we have a saying in Hebrew like the old person from the hallway, and you say it when you mean that the healthcare system is really in poor shape sometimes. And I stay a week in hospital. They don't know what it is. They let me go and they say, okay, you take these 2 medications. One is for heartburn, one is for like antihistamine for allergy, because I had some strange symptoms. It was probably a panic attack because you're so excited about medical school. Yeah. I'm excited, but I'm going to eat pizza in Bologna. Like, I should be good excited, not bad excited. And that's it. So they sent me off home. And in many places in the world, we have a very big crisis of continuity of care. So when they send you to the community care, it's like putting the old Eskimo on the iceberg and sending him to sea. It's like, that's it, you're lost. Because then you're gonna see like millions of doctors. Usually they're not connected to each other. And you're going to start this journey, which every chronic illness patient knows that like you are feeling completely powerless and helpless, and you don't know what to do. I don't know if any of you have any chronic illness, but you feel really miserable. You have to wait for months until you see another doctor. If you have a crisis, if you have pain, if your medications are not working. So something was not working there, but as a young person, I was thinking like in a week or 2 it will be okay. My bags are packed. I said goodbye to all of my friends, and I'm going to Italy, and I basically can't leave bed. I'm feeling really, really shitty, really bad. And I've decided to postpone this flight, wait another week until the last minute I can start the semester. But every day my condition is worse and worse and worse. And these 2 weeks became 2 months, and these 2 months became 3 months and 4 months. And after around 4.5 months, I'm losing my ability to walk. I'm 21, right? And I'm seeing a lot of doctors. At the beginning, they're very alarmed. I'm young, they're trying to do everything they can, like a lot of tests going on. I have always the same story. Always telling the same story. When I'm moving too fast, I'm fainting. When I'm in the shower, my legs becomes red. I feel like there is blood in my leg. I don't sweat anymore. Even if I do something like really hard, I'm not sweating. I have pains all over. I'm giving the same story to every doctor. But they don't seem to listen to me. They kind of in their head. And in Austria, it's kind of similar to Israel. You're talking to kind of an eyebrow human, and there's a screen of a computer. You're giving your e-card, and it's doing this all the time. But there's not a lot of human touch. Like, there's not a lot of communication. And then you get a note, you go to another doctor, another test, another doctor. So I can barely get out of bed now. It's a few months. I'm seeing a doctor and a doctor and a doctor and a doctor. And my condition becomes so worse that I'm losing, after a few months, 10 kilograms. They admit me to hospital. They're very alarmed by the loss of weight. We pull all the strings that we have in Israel. So 5 very senior doctors in this mega medical center in Haifa in Israel. It's one of the best hospitals in Israel, and we have very good doctors. They sit in one room for 1 hour, like in house, and they discuss my case. It's very hard to get. Not every patient gets it. And their conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, is that I have irritable bowel syndrome. I can't walk. If I talk more than 10 seconds, I'm fainting. Like, I'm losing weight, and they don't know what's happening. They have a suspicion that I'm making everything up. And I still have this letter today at my parents' place, that they give me a few medications, few recommendation, and please stop reading about illnesses online. This is the medical recommendation. I go back home, 2 more months, I lose almost 20 more kilos. At this point, I'm 48 kilos. I can't do anything anymore. I'm completely disabled. I cannot go to the bathroom anymore. I cannot shower anymore. No diagnosis. At this point, my parents are being summoned to talk to a social worker, and then the police is being involved for negligence, because they believe that they have something called Munchausen syndrome, and they are abusing me for getting some sort of sexual arousal or strange accuser. They say I'm anorectic. When I have rashes all over my body, they say that I'm taking histamine or some sort of flower that causes allergy, and I'm putting it on my skin. When I have stomach pain, they say I eat some sort of poison to make it happen. They blame me, and everything, of course, I have a Jewish mom. She feeds me. Everything is well. Everything is being taken care of. My family is crying every day because they don't know what's happening with me, but doctors stop believing me. In this point, I've seen 32 doctors, and we wait for a few months to see the 33rd doctor, which is the best expert in Israel. It's like a house, you know, kind of like for internal medicine. And this guy is my only hope. I hear a lot of stories about him online, that he really undiagnosed patients. That's it. This guy is gonna help me now. So it was very hard reaching this guy. He won't work with the e-card system. You have to pay like 300 euros to see him. We hear all sort of things that if you pay maybe more, you'll get faster treatment. I don't like this talk. I'm starting to understand it's not going to be very successful, but we still go. My dad had to carry me on his shoulders because I can't do anything anymore. And we sit there. I'm kind of like this next to my parents, and this doctor has no time because he makes 300 euros every 15 minutes. He's making more money than me. Like, so it's like, yeah. My dad is very organized, so he makes this like a thesis, you know. You take my entire, like, because we live in the 2000s years, we don't have the technology of putting medical records online. We have to come with this book. He flips it over. He's a good doctor. I see. Yeah, I've seen this before. He closes it. And then he tells my parents, okay. He got up. He says, stand up. He sits on his desk. When you study psychology a bit, you understand it's kind of a power pose, what he's doing. He's standing like this, his hand in his pocket, and tell my parents, okay, your child is gone, basically. He's not looking at me. He's just telling them. The kid, kaput. That's it. I'm like, what? what's going to happen? Like, what's happening? And then he tells them, I've been a doctor for 30 years. I don't know what it is, but I've seen a lot of cases similar to this. We have a lot of genetic problems now that we don't know how to diagnose. This is probably one of them. Because we gave this drug and the steroids and this drug, if nothing worked, and he's seen these professors, it's probably one of these conditions that basically you're never going to get better. And I have a few recommendations for you. And he said, Dad, write it down, Dad. So my dad started to write down. He says, okay, you go and get the kid a wheelchair. A wheelchair? Like, when you hear these words, wheelchair, something in your mind kind of twisted. Like, to this point in time, I had a lot of hope about getting better. Going back to medical school, helping people. I had a dream to go to Africa and work with refugee camps and so on. Like, this dream is shattered in this second. He says, Dad, you're not writing. Write faster. I don't have time for you. And then he says, okay, this kid needs TV in his room with cables. You can choose whatever company you want and buy him a nice mattress. He needs to grow up with dignity. We're not going to let this kid just lie in bed. He needs dignity. He needs TV. He needs a wheelchair. He needs a mattress. If he wants once a day, you can put him on the chair and he can spin around in his home. I'm like 23. Like, I'm not going to spend my life in bed. So, my mom started to cry. He never looked at me even one time. This doctor, professor. And then we go back home. We exhausted all the resources that we could. I got a few days before that an email from the Johns Hopkins Hospital, which is one of the best hospitals in the world, saying, we're sorry, but the list of doctors that are treating you are the best in their field in the world. Israel has very good doctors. We can't do any better than them. They did all the tests, blah, blah, blah. So basically, all my dreams are shattered about getting better. And I go back home, and it's the darkest night of my life. Because I understand I'm never going to go back to medical school. But this is not what bothers me. What bothers me more is that now I start to think about life, not as a young person, but as a person. And it's not about medical school anymore. It's not about this young dream. It's about living life. Because what's vibrating and echoing in my head is another sentence this doctor told me when I was trying to get up and my dad lifted me up. He told me, just remember, don't develop any dreams regarding this future of this kid. Because this child will never in his life work one day in his life, go to university, or marry a woman. Never. You'll probably never walk again too. And I come back home, and I'm making a very big decision regarding my life. I've decided to kill myself that night because I have no hope anymore. But I was very, very lucky. I was very, very lucky that night because I was so distressed I couldn't sleep. And when I couldn't sleep, I couldn't reach the light because I fainted 3 times trying to reach the light. It was just 1 meter, but I couldn't. And the only light coming from the street landed on a kind of a table, small table next to the bed in my brother's room because I used to live in the 2nd floor. I couldn't climb the stairs anymore, so we changed room. And he bought a book a week earlier, and he put the book there. And life is very funny when you close circles, but this book is by a Viennese guy named Dr. Viktor Frankl. It's called A Man's Search for Meaning. And this book, that night, saved my life. Because as a paramedic, I knew exactly what I needed to do to kill myself, kind of painlessly. And I actually started to plan it. But I was so distressed that I just read through this book. It's like 70 or 80 pages. It's not very long. It's like 1 night of read. And Viktor Frankl is a psychiatrist, a Jewish psychiatrist, and he was a prisoner in Auschwitz. And he made a small research in Auschwitz, trying to understand who survived and who didn't. Of course, you cannot control everything, but he realized that some people die and some people are not dying, not because somebody kills them, but because they just kind of get ill or get too weak or kind of lose any will to live. And he understands that people that has the will to live will probably live. And it sounds very strange because it's very hard to prove, but he kind of based this thesis later on when he finished in developing psychotherapy methods called logotherapy, which is very, very interesting because it's landed on the idea that any human should take responsibility on his own life. And when I was that age, I thought about responsibility as a very nice word, but if the road is broken, the city will fix it. If there is a problem in the country, the government will fix it. I was never trained or taught to be an entrepreneur or to solve problems. But in this moment in life, I realized that if I'm not taking responsibility on my own life, I'm not going to make it because the doctors have given up on me. Part of my family has given up on me because I don't have any diagnosis. I have huge debt because I don't have any diagnosis, I don't have any support. I lost friends, I lost med school. Facebook is coming, so everything is happier out there. Everybody has girlfriends, everybody like living a good life. And I'm here in my bed, my life is completely ruined, but I have to do something about it. I didn't know I'm an entrepreneur, but now I do. And I started to look at my illness as a problem. And that night I made a decision. I woke up the next morning, noon, and back then already, I was a few years in bed. Most of my medical school wannabes are already a few years into medical school. I called all of them and I asked them for the curricula of their medical school. And I'm able, after a few weeks, to acquire the entire curricula of the Tel Aviv Medical School. By crazy chance, there is a girl who just graduated a few years before, and she has a zip file in her blog with all the materials she studied for 6 years of medical school. And I have all the time in the world in my bed. I spent the next 2 years studying medicine from my bed. Everything, from cell biology to pathology. I know how to read x-rays, CTs, lab tests, everything. Because every time I have a new idea, I go to a doctor and then he say like, go away. I can say a name too, I can Google too. Don't confuse your Googling with my medical degree, you know this sign? So I realized that if I want a diagnosis, I need to work in the same way the doctors are working. And the doctors have a very, very, very systematic system. They have something called differential diagnosis. It means that if you suspect something, there are a few other statistical options. You need to rule them out. And then, after everything is ruled out, you confirm the diagnosis. It's very rare to have an illness that you have a definitive diagnosis. Usually, you just rule out the rest. Diagnosis is not 100% accurate, really far from this. And there's a lot of errors. We're going to talk about it, and the errors in communication. But after a while, I managed to build a case, organized, because my dad helped me, that every time a doctor comes with a stupid saying, this is the other diagnosis, I say, no, test it out. No, test it out. But how do I do it? How can I actually prove the doctor's wrong? I found out the differential diagnosis. I went to the entire list of 33 doctors. There are 2 doctors who are nice to me. I don't care about this profession. One is an endocrinologist and one is a skin doctor, a dermatologist. They're the only one who've been kind to me. I don't care about anything. They have an MD and they're nice. I come to them and I beg them to go over the insurance kind of qualifications or requirements and help me get tests that I know that will be negative to prove those other diagnoses that I need. So I'm working in the same system as the doctor. I'm kind of a client in a supermarket. I'm using healthcare just to prove my case. I'm doing like this. And I'm doing so many tests. Later on, those 2 doctors are being in a lot of trouble because of me, but a lot of people are involved in this story because they try to help me, but I cost something around 100,000 euros to my HMO, Krankenkasse, for testing. I did a very, very interesting tricks, everything legal, to convince the doctors giving me tests. But I have my theory, I have a diagnosis. I realized that all these crazy symptoms that I have are actually dysregulation of my nervous system, but our nervous system is divided into two. The part that I control, hands, talking, walking, and so on, and the autonomic or automatic part that I can control, like digestion, breathing, blood pressure, pulse, everything, sweat, everything that was wrong with me all this time was sourced to a faulty autonomic nervous system. And I trace it back to an injury I had in my back during my military service. I'm building the case, but I can't find any doctor in Israel that kind of know what he's talking about because it's so rare. So I'm Googling and Googling and Googling, and then I'm actually what I'm doing, because you cannot know where the doctor is from when you have a medical research paper. I'm looking for Jewish names, but there's a lot of Jewish doctors out there. After like 100 essays or meta-analysis or whatever I'm going through there, I see a name that I know, because these initials, I've seen this before, and I found out that a doctor that I've been to before, a few years before, he was in the States for a fellowship, he did a study, really remotely connected to this illness. So the only doctor in Israel that could diagnose me was actually seeing me 3 years ago. I have all my criteria to diagnosis from the first week. And then I realized that it's gonna sound crazy. I spent 5 years in bed out of 7 years I've been ill for more than 10 years, but 7 years I was completely disabled. 5 years I was bedridden. 5 years, right? The only doctor in the country that could help me his office was 2 floors below my home. Just like I'm talking here, I'm living 2 floors up. It's crazy. And my entire diagnosis is technically can be made in any clinic in 5 minutes. It's a few blood pressure measurements, that's all. I've wasted 5 years of my life on miscommunication. Not stupidity, not negligence, not anything, I'm not accusing, just miscommunication. Of course, miscommunication is the problem that's causing all the wars in the world and divorces and everything. I'm not a psychologist, but miscommunication is a big deal. But when it's come to healthcare, it costs lives and quality of life. I'm coming to this doctor and I have to prove to him that I'm right, and he's fighting me for like 20 minutes, trying to give everything he can to prove that this is so rare that there's a lot of illnesses before that come. But every time he says something, I prove him wrong because I have this huge case. And eventually, I've been sent to an hospital in Israel, and I'm doing a tilt test. You know, in house, they always kind of, you lay on a bed and they kind of lift you up and then you faint. I've been diagnosed after 30 seconds into this test, and I just felt a huge waste of time. I become, from this crazy person who invents his own illness, everything is in my head, now I'm too sick, nobody wants to treat me, even not a dentist. Everybody's so afraid to touch me because I have such a crazy illness. And no hospital in Israel is willing to take me on as a rehabilitation patient. I cannot walk, so now I'm already trained. I have another problem. I have my diagnosis. Now I have a few medications that can help me manage my symptoms. I can slowly almost get out of bed for 1 minute or so before fainting. Now it's not a few seconds, because before that, if I change the position in the pillow like this, I faint, right? It's crazy. Now I have to teach myself how to walk again. So nobody wants to treat me. I order in eBay those rubbers they use in physical therapy, and I start to activate my muscles. I realized that this illness was actually discovered by NASA, because astronauts coming back from the space station, if they're not exercising, they have the same symptoms. So I take the protocol of NASA of rehabilitation, and I do it at home as much as I can. And in the first few weeks, I'm getting out of bed, fainting, walking 2 steps, fainting. A friend is carrying me, walking 5 stairs, fainting. After 2 months, I'm walking outside of my home. After 7 months, I'm walking 7 kilometers every day by myself. I taught myself to walk again. I taught myself to speak again, because I could barely speak. I taught myself cognitively to return to everything that I knew before, because everything was When you lie in bed so long, you develop agoraphobia. You're afraid of the world. Everything I knew was medical books and cable TV and National Geographic and Discovery Channel because I wanted to learn more. You have to rehabilitate yourself to life, to return to life, actually. And I've decided that the goal of this end of this year is to go back to school, but I can't go back to medical school. It's too much for me. Nevertheless, I'm too sick to be accepted to medical school on paper. Today, I'm 100% disabled, but I couldn't do it. I believe that doctors today are like firefighters. They're putting out symptoms. They're not treating illnesses. So I'm going into another direction. I'm doing a special program that is kind of a pre-med, but they teach you also to be kind of a social entrepreneur, and you get a teacher certificate. And why did I do a teacher certificate? Because I believe that teachers can prevent stuff, crime, social misjustice, and so on. And I want to deal with prevention. I want to fix healthcare. This is my goal in life. So I start school, and every year in college, I take on myself a project. First year, I start a startup that tries to deal with a certain part of healthcare. We failed. Second year, another startup. We failed. Third year, another startup. We don't fail. We actually make such a huge success, not financially, socially, that I call it the social exit. Our technology is being used by the Israeli Red Cross and another security organization in Israel. It's basically a life-saving app that if you call for help from your phone, there is a network of people that come to help you. Why did I do it? Because when you lie in bed and all you want is to scream for help, you wish to have a button. But it wasn't a psychology app, it was emergency medicine because that's what I was strong in. I was a paramedic, but it's not enough for me. And then I'm thinking that we need to do something about the fact that nobody teaches people how to be healthy. I don't know what you did in schools. In America, there is health education, but in other countries, it's not very developed. Depends on the state. In Ohio, it's developed. That I know because I know the curriculum. But in many countries in the world, you don't study about being healthy. So I founded an organization called For Health in Israel, and we go to the most underprivileged schools and neighborhoods, and we teach people how to cook healthy, how to prevent illnesses. And it's working really great. Apparently, when you sit people in a circle and you talk about stuff, they understand that maybe they need to change something. So we did a very cool intervention program in the neighborhood with the most diabetes in Israel. We won a few awards. Now this program is being funded by a huge foundation and runs in a lot of schools in Israel. I started another foundation, another startup. But it's not about me being successful. This is not about this talk all about. It's about the fact that my life was changed, the fact that if I can fix my own body and my own self, I can fix anything else. So every year I take a new challenge and I try to fix it. And the motivation part is coming from a very basic instinct. It's not about I need to look externally for motivational sources. The fact that you're here means that you're interested in something external that will incite you to be with motivation. But when you look at people that are walking and talking and living, and you're on the outside looking in, you start to realize that everything in life is kind of bullshit if you don't have help. Like, I didn't envy those friends who went to South America for a trip. I envied those friends who came to my home and they could get up to the second floor to bring us drinks because they could climb stairs. When friends visited me, I envied them that they could lift their plate and eat by themselves. I met a friend a few years back that he was a neighbor of mine, then he moved away to another country. He saw me and he started crying because he remembered he came to me one time and I couldn't eat, so he had to feed me. You need to understand that everything you have is not for granted, nothing. And this is not for granted. And it's very hard to remind yourself this every day because you can get up in the morning and you have some debt and problems at work and relationship problems and shit happens, right? But if you always come back with the focus to the fact that nothing is for granted, so everything is easier. That's why it's easy for me to be an entrepreneur because I do things that people think they're crazy. When I have an idea, I pursue it. When I decided to do this app, the Red Cross was the biggest opponent. They didn't want this app. And my entire goal in this startup was to convince the Red Cross to use it. And when they didn't use it, I had to find a strategy to go to their other organization that they hate and convince them to take it in order for them to take it. But it doesn't matter, because that's what you do if you want to fix something. You find a way. Everything I did since I learned to walk again in the age of around 27 or something, was 28, was to try to fix things in healthcare and to empower people. But I didn't fix the main cause that caused me to be in bed, and to cause many, many, many of my peers to be in bed with undiagnosed conditions. People in my illness, with my same condition, sometimes they take up to 5 years to be diagnosed. We have one of the highest rates of suicides among chronic illnesses because nobody knows how to deal with us. 2 years ago, they realized that it's not that rare as they thought, it's just undiagnosed. Just like a few years back, celiac disease was very rare, but then they discovered it's just undiagnosed, it's not rare at all. So I'm raising awareness. I was so alone that I didn't have any other patient to talk to. When I was diagnosed, I founded the Israeli Society of Dysautonomia. This is the name of my illness. And we set up a clinic in the Shiva Medical Center in Tel Aviv. Now the time for diagnosis is 3 months for this illness. This is really changing life. I was ashamed of being ill. I did all this project, but I didn't tell people that I was ill because I was ashamed. People treated me as the sick guy. And then one journalist in Israel found out, he made a story about me. That's how I became a public speaker. I didn't want to stand in front of people and talk about it. I was ashamed of it. But the first time I went to TV, 4 people got diagnosed. Isn't it crazy? Like 4 people got diagnosed because they heard another guy's story and went to their doctor and he reads about it online. And this illness is so rare. 1 week, of course, because that's Merfilo, 1 week after I got diagnosed, it was featured on House. I saw a House episode, 20 seconds, I diagnosed it. I wish it was before, because then it would save a lot of time. But this is life, like this is my gift. Like, I know it's gonna sound like a cliche, but I imagine myself, a doctor at 27, very, very overburdened, very unhappy, living a very mediocre life, and I wouldn't want that to myself. I think I'm helping not less of another doctor, helping other people. I just think that eventually, it's a cliche, but this illness is the best gift I ever got because I had a lot of time to think. I had a lot of time to discover myself, to know what I want in life, who I want to be in life, to do stuff that my friends are afraid to do. I lived in other countries across the world because I wanted to see the world. I do crazy stuff that other people don't do because I appreciate life. Everything has to, of course, I need to work on my fitness like everyone else, and my nutrition and my sleep. Everybody has a challenge. But eventually, I think I'm braver because I know what it's like to be on the other side. So the main problem wasn't solved, the thing with the miscommunication between doctor and patient. I thought maybe training the doctors will help. I go to medical school, I train the young doctors, it's great, but it wasn't enough. And then for a few years, I'm trying to pinpoint what's the problem that doctors are kind of missing those diagnoses. Then I realized that the computer systems they're working on are really shitty. They're so shitty that in America, in 10 minutes, a doctor can click his mouth between 500 to 1,000 times. There are studies about it. Every time you're with a doctor, between 50 to 70% is wasted on typing. And if the doctor wants to find a piece of information inside of the system, he needs to go maybe 20, 30 windows inside the system. The doctors have become clerks. They cannot do their job properly. They cannot communicate with us. When I realized this, I'm trying to set up a startup to fix this thing. Super hard. Then you have a lot of strong powers against you because this organization don't want to change. Governments don't want to change. And I almost give up. But then I realized that I have to fix this information system problem. And I don't care if it will be my last startup, but I have to fix this specific problem, and then I can do only charity, whatever. But I have to fix this problem. And we had a huge crisis in our company. Our first client, we tried to make some money. So we made a deal with a pharmaceutical company to provide them with medical questionnaire because the technology was kind of similar. And then this pharmaceutical collapsed. They owe us a lot of money. Half of my team leaves. And then I have to kind of shut down the company. And in the last attempt, I had no money. I lost 10 years of working. Everything I invest in my charities and my startup. I have, I think, around 500 or 600 euros left on my credit card that I can use. I take a flight ticket to New York. I take a bus to Rochester because I hear there is a company there, the only company in the world that tried to do the same idea. And I go in the fucking snow like this in Rochester, knock on the door of these few cute guys, older people, like 50-something-year-old. They're doctors, they're trying to fix it, and they don't understand who am I, what do I want. And I tell them this crazy story of mine. And I tell them that I really believe that what we're doing is going to change healthcare. Maybe you don't know enough about healthcare, but if you understand healthcare, if you change the information system, you can save so many lives, and you can really change healthcare completely. So that day I convinced these guys to be my partners. I rebuilt the company, and this company is now running. There's a lot of doctors who use it in the States, and we are about to do a big move here in Europe too. And this proved to me that it's just a matter of taking a plane or picking up the phone. I can tell you all about the other startups. It's all similar. I had a competitor, I call him, we become partners. Somebody say no to me, I convince him to say yes. Because it's always the same. It's always come back to the fact that what's important in life is really the basic things. When you lay in bed and you cannot move, nothing worth it. You start to play games with your mind. You say, if I had $1 million right now, what would I do? Nothing. I'm in bed, I can't do anything. Maybe I'll have an acupuncture in bed or something like this. Maybe I'll feel a bit better, foot massage. What can I do? I'm in bed, right? So try to play this game in your mind. Like, it's not about money. I thought maybe a girlfriend would help, and then I had a girlfriend when I was sick. It didn't help. Like, it's not the external thing. It's what you have here and what you decide to do with your life. And I'm not going to be Tony Robbins with you and make you faint and tell you, call your wife, tell her she's stupid. It's not about this. It's about realizing that everybody can make a change. It can start in the small thing around you. And I have only one rule. If you have one thing that bothers you, just go and do something about it. And when I work in workshops with CEOs and stuff, I tell them, when you open the news, what's the things that annoy you the most? In Europe, it's going to be environmental, stuff like this, more like social thing. In countries like Israel, it's more security. It depends. Poverty, depends where I ask. But if you really care about something, stop like, I'm going to do something about it. It's just like, not in your dream do something about it. There's so many things you can do. You don't have to start a company or charity, but you can definitely change the world. Because really, if a person standing here and all my friends are in wheelchairs, all my friends are using canes and walkers, technically, I can stand for 30 seconds. I'm 100% disabled. I'm behindered. I have a certificate. I can show you. If I can stand here for 1 hour and speak to you, I think that everything in this world is possible. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Questions? No question? Really? You're the first. No, it's my first talk publicly in Austria, so usually in other countries people are very active.
You ask too fast.
Ask too fast. You need to relax. Yeah. Okay, I'm used to it. No, anything you want to ask, anything you want to know more, anything you want to advise, you can come personally later. But
do you have now some?
Just a second.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Roy. So you said that book saved your life that night.
Yeah.
What did you see in there exactly that motivated you so much?
As a Jewish person, which my grandmother came, like, she's a Holocaust survivor, and reading about those Holocaust survivors, that the mental change changed something in them, did something to me. And in Israel, in education system, like in the educational system, everywhere you can see signs in school, responsibility, responsible, be responsible, but nobody is talking about actual personal responsibility. So this theme is coming back and back in this book. I really urge you, if you haven't read this book, A Man's Search for Meaning, it's originally in German, of course in English, in Kindle, in Amazon, everywhere. It's super famous, super short, super recommended. I didn't know my grandmother's story until many people didn't talk about it until a few days before she died, and then she told us, these people, like, I had such a comfortable life with food and everything. Like, she had to run to the woods at the age of 12 and hid in the woods for 2 years. She was then in a camp for 2 years. Like, people survived, people came to Israel, they started families, and most of those people, when they came, they started a war. So they came from the Holocaust, got a weapon, and went to war. So when you kind of relate to this, you say, oh my God, like, my life is so comfortable, I need to do something about it. So that's what was this from thing, but it's very personal. Yeah, Baki.
Like now, how do you feel now generally?
Today was a really shitty day.
I mean,
I'm saying today I was very busy. I couldn't, but only the adrenaline kept me going. I still have symptoms sometimes. I was rehabilitated. I had 4 very good years. I got to a point that I didn't take any medication, but I lived in China, and the pollution and the stress did something to me. And then I came back to Israel. After 2 days, I was sick again, 1 year in bed again, almost. But then I wasn't alone. We had the clinic, we had the rehabilitation. So every day in the morning, I go to the hospital rehabilitation. Every afternoon, managing 3 NGOs and a startup. And, you have to, like, it's a chronic illness. My doctor says it's going to shorten your, not going to shorten your life, but going to make them miserable. Kind of, that's in Hebrew kind of the same. But, the fact that I'm breathing and standing, it's fucking amazing. I didn't tell you a lot of things. I didn't want to talk for 2 hours, but I had a lot of dreams when I was ill, and it's so easy to make dreams come true, really. I had a dream to speak at TED, because I saw those people, and I get so much inspiration from those TED Talks. And then I realized, in every place in the world, there are TEDx in university. And when I came to university, nobody did anything about it. So I came to the president of the university, and I convinced them to do a TEDx. So I brought TEDx to the Israeli academia, basically, which is crazy, right? And then after a few years, I gave a TED Talk in Shanghai, in China, which is a really cool thing to do. But it was kind of 3,000 people. It's different. It's scary, but yeah, it's cool. It's only one milestone. You can help people. More questions? No? Yes. Hi, Daniela.
Were or are you angry at any of the 30 doctors you saw, or do you think they did the best they could?
Wow, that's a really good question. I was very angry at the beginning, and I'm surrounded with very angry birds patients. Patients hate doctors. Chronic illness patients, basically, we have rivalry. Doctors think that patients are stupid, patients think that doctors are stupid. I was like this until I realized that you go to medical school to help people. And you become this not nice person because you go through this shitty system and you don't sleep and you don't see your children and you don't make enough money, and it's going to take you a lot of time to be a comfortable office doctor. And when you look at the narrative of those both sides, you understand that you need to meet them in the middle. And if we don't have any communications between them, no training for better communications, and nobody knows how to talk with each other, and you have all these things they have to do in the middle. So that's why I thought that if I put technology in there and I give back FaceTime from doctor and patient, they can talk again. Doctors can be doctors again. Anything can be better. And it may sound strange, but the doctors getting our technology are really happy, because they say, I feel I'm a doctor again. This is a beautiful thing to say. And patients are happy because they get better care. So I'm not angry anymore. At the beginning, they brought me for debates in TV and radio. they brought this doctor and he fought me on radio. He told me I'm a liar and I'm not sick, blah, blah, blah. And, it was very power struggle. And then I realized this is wrong. Like, I believe in revolutions. This talk is called How to Start a Revolution from Your Bed. But eventually you can achieve the same result with a word revolution and with nice acts and kindness revolution. You don't have to actually fight somebody. Cool. More questions? No? Wow. I had a talk that I had 2 hours of questions. You're either very hungry, tired, shy, everything, all the above. Anything else?
What do you think about this trend where they all talk about replacing the diagnostics, replacing the doctor by essentially a machine that does the diagnosis then?
A human cannot know a database of 32,000 illnesses. That's like, unless you're a savant.
Yeah.
I believe that in 10 years, doctors will be more like, in a plane, the plane kind of flies itself and the pilot is more of kind of supervising. Doctors are going to be kind of like this. We're going to have a lot of system working. Most of the procedures and the actual caretaking will be made by, we call them senior providers, nurse practitioners and physician assistant in the States, like people, they are not doctors, but have very high education of treating people. And I really believe that doctors should remain humans, but should assist machines, because eventually we cannot replace the AI with human, but we cannot replace human with AI. It has to be kind of a combination. They call it this decision support system, and it's going to be in everything. Everything in medicine we're going to have. We have two systems in Israel that can diagnose any X-ray right now. It's already working in Israel in a few hospitals. Breast cancer is being automated. Pathology is being automated. It's going to be exciting for healthcare innovation. Hey, Eric.
Yeah, how's it going?
I'm thirsty, yeah.
You want to grab
Yeah,
a drink
I will
while
get
I'm
an
talking?
iced tea soon. Thank you.
So I think everyone here can agree that you've done some pretty crazy things that half of us can't even possibly imagine, right? Or maybe that's just me. But you said that, this is the startup, this is the one that you really want to make happen. Now things are going, you're getting ready for a big launch. And you said that, this is the one that happens. If it happens, that's, hurrah, hurrah, right? But at least coming from your speech, that doesn't sound like you, at least.
Not at all.
Exactly.
It's just a piece of tech.
Yeah, no, but that's why I'm curious. Let's say tomorrow it's done. Your startup is done, it's complete, it's out of your hands, and it's saving people's lives everywhere.
Good question.
What's next?
So first of all, I have a lot of ambivalency about focusing completely on a piece of tech, even though it's so important. I do it because it's important, and my team is amazing. But eventually, I'm a people's people. I need to be in a place that I'm talking to people, that I'm training people. My biggest dream, actually, it's gonna sound crazy, but to be rich enough so I can just do charity, go back to medical school and practice medicine. I wish I could. Really. But I think that if not that, it's teaching, talking, really training, do something that will affect people and empower people. Because I believe that this is one project along the way. I don't believe it's going to be the end. I don't see myself just sitting home and doing nothing. And nobody asked me why I'm in Austria, by the way. Because this is the most beautiful closing of a circle in the entire illness. Anybody wants to ask why am I?
Where are you in Austria?
Lena, thank you for bringing it up. Thank you. So some people call me a professional talker. I know to speak my way around. So I was invited by LinkedIn to a think tank of 2 days in Austria of the future hospital, kind of. It was a hospital group called the Vincent's Hospital. We have a hospital called the St. Joseph here in the 5th District. So it's part of the 8th hospital group, belongs to the church. Super innovative, super nice people, super kind people. I never met such a nice hospital management in my life. But first of all, I thought it's a spam message on LinkedIn, like for the first 3 times, and then I said, okay. And I came to Austria for 2 days, and everybody around me were Harvard professors and stuff like this. I don't know how they found me, I'm not an expert of anything. they brought me as kind of an expert patient and patient innovator, to give this advice. And then they really liked me, so they invited me to another symposium with millions of more other Harvard professors and smarter people than me. And I gave this talk. And after I gave this talk, a really nice old lady came to me and she told me, do you want to come and advise our organization? And I was like, yeah, why not? Like, let's talk. I didn't everybody was so polite. I didn't think it's like kind of, I didn't know she's the CEO of a huge organization in Austria that in charge of healthcare research and so on. And eventually, they heard my talk. They wanted me to come to advise. I flew a few times, I advised, and then I told them, listen, I have a crazy idea. I really believe that every medical organization or organization that deals with patients should have a chief patient, what's called a patient in residence. If you have a chief doctor, you need a chief patient. Everybody tells me I'm crazy because, well, you're a patient, what do you know? But we know a lot. We've been to the other side. We know how it's like to be in healthcare. Did you ever think about it, that the only industry in the world that doesn't care about the customer is healthcare? Right? Do you imagine like kind of going to a restaurant, people say, I don't care if you buy this food, right? So I believe that the patient should be a strong leading part of healthcare. And this woman believed me too. And she said, okay, let's give you a role of the chief patient for 6 months and see what's happened. So I came to do, as we say in Hebrew, balagan. I came to make to stir things up. And there is a very distinguished organization called the Ludwig Boltzmann Institute. And I was the first ever, probably in the world, but at least in Europe, patient in residence for a national medical research organization. And then it made a lot of headlines around the world. And this is such an amazing thing to do. This person, the doctor tells him everything is in your head, you put this, you're lying, and now I'm the manager of the doctor. It's fucking amazing. So this is why I'm in Austria. And this is cool. Do you have any more questions? Yes,
How does that work?
So I did it for 6 months. I helped design a policy that every time a patient comes to a research facility, like for medical trials and so on, you have some sort of like a patient-friendly standard to how to treat and involve patient better in decision making. My first decision was that in the board of directors, there's going to be two patients, not only executives, because if you deal with patients, you need the patient voices. And we did patient councils, we did a blog and a podcast about patient empowerment, a website, and we developed a chatbot to help cancer patients cope better with this illness, kind of a companion, like a friend alongside with Watson, IBM.
But you also give advice to the doctors, right?
Give advice to the doctor, train them, train the staff, train the researcher.
And they listen to you.
It was very hard. I have to say, in Austria, it's a country of think. People used to say to me, like, you are the only one here with no PhD, why would I listen to you? It was a lot of struggles, but eventually, like see who's gonna win, because eventually, what you bring to the table is ego, and what I bring to the table is values and willingness to change. So I did it. That's why I did it only for 6 months. I wanted to make my stance and move on, let another person do whatever needed to be done, and then I focused on my company. But I do a lot of other things. I have 3 charities. I have this charity of patients like me, like patient organization. I have this educational fund, and I have international youth movement that we train criminal and underprivileged youth to become first aid instructors, and they teach CPR and first aid in their villages or areas they're active. We're active in China, in Nepal, in Ghana, in other places, and it's super cool. But all of these projects are kind of managed. They have their team that manage them, and I basically do the advocacy and the evangelism and just speak. Yeah? Anything else? No? So grab a drink, and you can ask me questions in private. And thank you so much for the Fitz for having me here, even though it's my home. Thank you so I'm allowed to be here legally because I pay. Thank you for having me and supporting and sponsoring this event. I really appreciate it.
We say thank you for this great talk.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure we can do more cool stuff together.
Yeah.
I think next we can do a public speaking workshop because of my TED experience. I do it a lot. how to speak like a TED speaker, and I think the guys will love it. Thank you for taking the time in this crazy rain and coming. I really appreciate it. I know half of you are my friends, but still, thank you for doing that. And my only wish for the rest of the night is that somebody will bring me iced tea, and that you will remember that health is everything in life. Thank you so much.